Hey guys, I just wanted to reach out to you and let you know that Surewinder is still selling amazing products. Some of you guys have been dragging your feet for whatever reason. If your shoulder hurts, do not waste time. Pull the trigger. I just bought 4 or 5 of them, and we had 2 guys out. You know how much it cost me to pay for 2 guys being out with bad shoulders? We just pulled the trigger and we said, listen, everybody's going to have one on a truck. It's mandatory. You got to use it. Don't hesitate. Don't wait till your guys go down. It's going to cost you more. Buy a Surewinder.
Hey guys, what's up? Ryan here, Torsion Talk Podcast, and I've got a few announcements before I get to my guest this week, which I think you're going to be really excited to hear from. We got a lot of rave reviews about a previous interview I did with some private equity folks. So I got one online, someone that I admire, someone who I think will be very educational for you guys and help you answer some questions that maybe we didn't get across on the first interview. So before we get into that, I've got a couple announcements. Number one, GDU Summit is scheduled. It's on the books. It is booked. We have paid the deposit for the hotel. GDU Summit, April 21st, 22nd in Vegas, days before the expo. So make sure that you guys check that out. We are about to throw up our landing page, get all the information up for that. We already have almost half of it sold out just from GDU members. We've got some killer speakers coming in. We've got some great events. We're even going to take a field trip on the 22nd that I think is going to be life-changing for you guys. We have a free webinar November 22nd. This is totally free. We're going to limit it to about 50 people. We are going to do a webinar on how to do marketing in a down economy. So we're going to get some guerrilla style stuff in there. We're going to talk about making sure that you're measuring your numbers, focusing on where your ad spend's going. We're going to cover a lot, but you're definitely not going to want to miss that. And it's free. We got a registration form up on garagedooru.com, so check that out. Next thing, we have December 7th and 8th, we have a training. We are almost halfway sold out there, and we have the sales training for technicians. That's going to be here in Atlanta again. I know I said I would discontinue it and not have any more till the end of the year, but I seriously had a bunch of people banging on me to get this going again. And I had 1 week where I could fit it in. That was December 7th through the 8th. So if you're interested in that, make sure you sign up. Registration forms on there. It's like $1,099 per person. We're almost halfway sold out there as well. In February, I'm going to, I think it's R&T out in Germany, group with Somer. I'm super excited about this. Never been out there. A little nervous. We got like World War III breaking out. I'm going to fly over closer to it. But nonetheless, I hope to get a lot of information and share it with you guys. I'm going to do a recap on the podcast of everything I learned and saw. I'm taking Pancake with me, so we're going to be videoing the trip. We're going to document the whole thing. So you get to go on this trip with us. You'll get to see it. I also just got an experience with Starlink. I don't know if you guys have any experience with Starlink. It's backup internet for my house. We found out that we couldn't get internet for like 30 days after we moved in because the wonderful internet provider dropped the ball on some stuff. And when they were supposed to be there to install it, they told me that they couldn't install it. They called me and said that it's going to be like 30 days out. So nonetheless, I had already been prepared because I wanted a backup internet for my house, and I'm using Starlink. There is not a paid advertisement, but I know we talk a lot about plan Bs and things that you can do to prepare for maybe like an outage or something. So I was just thinking that maybe Starlink might be a great solution for you if you're running like on service siting or whatever. You have power go down or internet go down, you can just switch to Starlink real quick. It's worked great for me, just the standard speed, nothing crazy. I didn't buy the super expensive satellite or anything. I just did the basic with the minimum internet, and it's actually working really well for us. We're able to stream videos off of the Wi-Fi and everything. So works really well. You can even hardwire it with an adapter, but just a little tip I thought might be helpful. We're doing the Traction book right now. This is going to be the 3rd or 4th time I've read this book, but we're going through it with our leadership teams here at Aaron Overhead Doors and such media, as well as the Garage Door U business owners in the book club. So just want to encourage you guys to read that. Now's like the perfect time to do that. You can roll into January, understanding your rocks and how to hold people accountable. I think that's going to be super great. Mount On-Site Training has a bunch of trainings up. I think he just posted that he's going to raise his prices for his training soon. So if you're looking for technical training, make sure you check out Mount On-Site Training with David Mount. You can get your guys certified. That's been a huge plus for us. We mentioned them on the phone, how our guys are certified. It helps us book appointments. We have it on our website. All of our guys are certified. So that's a huge benefit to you if you're trying to separate yourself and find differentiating factors. And then lastly, I got moved into my house, as all of you guys have been kind of following along and how stressful it's been. But one thing I want to point out that I think is super important, there are subs out there who genuinely care and it shows, and there's subs out there that genuinely don't care. And you can tell usually within the first like 30 seconds to a minute. And I can tell you that I just want you guys to understand. I think most of the people following this podcast are the kind that care. And I just want to say, like, it makes a huge impression when you come there and you smile and you lay out the expectations and you follow through on them. I can't tell you how many people I've been arguing with over the last year, subs who have told me they're going to do one thing and they do another, or they're cutting corners. Our sheetrock guy was the worst. And then we had little things here and there, but it's just some people just look at it as get the job done and get out. And if you're building a home or you're doing something in your home, you really care about your home. So it's important that the people that are working on it also care. So it's just a reminder out there to all of you guys in the field, or to remind your guys to go out there and really represent your business and do it in a way that makes them feel like you care, because it just puts people at ease and builds trust. So, sorry, I'm needing to rush through all those announcements because we have a great episode today lined up. And I want to introduce you to someone who I personally got to talking to, didn't even know that I was talking to, who I was talking to, but I followed his career in professional football. And he was known by me as the guy who wasn't scared to block like a lot of wide receiver prima donnas. He was not one of those guys. He was tough. He was willing to go across the middle. He caught passes from the infamous Peyton Manning, who arguably one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. But Anthony Gonzales, most recently served 4 years in Congress representing the state of Ohio. Prior to that, he was a professional football player with the Indianapolis Colts. He played a long time. I'll find that out here in just a second. He has his bachelor's from Ohio State and his MBA from Stanford University. He has had multiple businesses and is now leading commercial overhead door investment thesis for Alpine Investors. Everybody, welcome Anthony Gonzales. How are you, bro?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. That was a very kind introduction. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and you played at Ohio State. You do 3 and out, or did you play all 4?
So I played 3, but I was there for 4. So I redshirted my
Okay.
freshman year, and I told him, I said, you can redshirt me, but I'm in 4 years I'm going to leave. I'm either gonna have a degree or I'm going to go to the NFL. And so
Yeah.
I left after my 3rd season, but 4th year. So I graduated and moved on.
I think about these kids, and I didn't follow you in high school or college, so I don't know. But like, if you're really good and you like kicked butt in high school, and then you got to go sit for a year and not play a game, uh, that's got to be like extremely difficult, because you were probably a superstar on your team if you got a scholarship to Ohio State, and then now you're like you're on the bench for a year not playing any games.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I got there, and, of course, in the recruitment process, they're telling you you're the greatest player they've ever
Yeah,
seen. And you're gonna
right.
you're gonna come in day one and start and all this. So when I got to Ohio State, it was the year after they had beat Miami in the national championship. So they had a great team. And the
Yeah.
coaches, hey, we got a spot for you. You're gonna come right in. I know exactly where to put you. And the real answer was they're gonna put me on the bench. So so I said so I
Uh,
sat for about a year and a half actually, and then in the middle of my redshirt freshman year, I finally cracked the lineup
Good for you.
and never let go after I got in. That once you get that taste of it, you'll do anything to stay
Yeah.
in that. So
Yeah, it's awesome. And then you played for the Colts. Was that the only team you played for? That's the only team I remember you playing for.
Yeah, I was there for 5 years. I was healthy for two and was doing well. I wasn't a Pro Bowler, but was doing fine. And then the injury bug bit, and it never stopped biting. And so I finished my rookie contract out as a 5-year deal. I went to New England for about 2 months, and Bill Belichick cut me, and he was the one I told I was going to retire. I said, "Hey, coach, I'm not healthy. I think I got to find something else to do with myself." So off to
So should
Stanford
we
from there.
blame Manning for throwing
No,
you into linebackers and safeties, or what?
no, it was all. There's kind of a controversy around this now. So Indianapolis is a turf field. You're inside. It's a dome. I honestly think the amount of time I spent on turf just grinded me up. So we had turf practice fields. We had turf practice field at Ohio State, but we had a grass game field. But turf indoor, turf practice field, just all that wear and tear on the body, and my hips and my knees just couldn't take it anymore. So
Yeah, that makes
it
sense.
was I think it was that more than anything else, to be honest.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't know how like all these private equity firms, I guess it kind of like I think a lot of them got into the idea of the garage door or the overhead door idea when Tommy Mello put out a request for funding. And I think that drew a lot of attention over at A1.
Mm-hmm.
And now I get phone calls all the time, messages through Facebook and text from people all over the industry. Like, man, I'm getting like one call a week from different companies, or it's different for everybody. But we're all receiving these phone calls from these private equity funds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell me a little bit about Alpine and how you guys were brought aware of the garage door industry and why you decided to enter it?
Sure. So, real quick on Alpine. So Alpine's I think it's a 22-year firm, 22-year-old firm started by a man named Graham Weaver, sort of out of his dorm when he was at Stanford getting his MBA. And the firm is basically split into two groups. There's one group that focuses on software investments, and then there's another group that focuses on services. And the services group, which is where I sit, we primarily do field services, and do aggregators similar to what you've seen with A1. So we have a residential HVAC business that is the largest residential HVAC business in the country. It's 185 plus brands, over 2,500 technicians nationwide. None of whom it's called Apex Service Partners. None of those businesses are called Apex. Apex is sort of the holding company, if you will. And then all the local brands keep their local branding. So you may, if you've used HVAC contractors recently, you may have interacted with one of their businesses. You'd have no idea because it's not called Apex. It's called, whatever.
Right.
Like locally here, I'm in Washington, D.C. Locally, that is who do we have? We have FH Fur is ours. So in any event, so we do a lot of these field services aggregators, and what that means and why I would say is a couple things. So number one, they tend to be giant markets, right? Big, huge markets, locally delivered services. So, Aaron Overhead Doors, you are known where you are known, not known as well in Cleveland, where I'm from, right?
Right.
And so, we think when we can partner with great local brands and do it all throughout the country, elevate those best practices, sort of get that knowledge sharing across the platform, that you can unlock some pretty tremendous growth. And so for us, it's, how big is the market? Do we feel like we have an edge? Can we add something? Can we actually help make these businesses better under our ownership? And what kind of revenue quality do they have? And what revenue quality really boils down to is the answer to the question, how confident are you that the revenue you had last year will be there next year and then some? And so if there's a, highly cyclical business out there, the answer is I'm not confident, right?
Right.
But for something like a garage door or something like we're more on the commercial side, or almost exclusively on the commercial side for overhead doors. If that loading dock door goes down or that overhead door goes down, you have to fix it. If you don't, the business will lose money. And if you're a residential customer, I just went through this. We just replaced our garage door. It was broken. Giant pain in the butt, right?
How was that experience? Was it?
Well, when it's not working, right? Like I got to get out of the car. I got to manually
but
lift
it's
it.
not needed. Like you can go without it and go through the front door.
Yeah, you can go without it. But it just, at some point you go, I just can't deal with this anymore. And so you got to get it fixed and replaced. And so that's, in a nutshell, kind of what I would say. And then obviously financially, the margins have to be right. The growth has to be there. There has to be a solid team in place. Everybody runs it a little differently. I'd say, one difference between Alpine and other private equity, most private equity, when they find a business, they want to leave the team exactly as is in place. They don't have leadership. One difference for us is we specialize, I would say, in finding businesses where the founder wants to leave and move on, and then helping place a new leader inside that business, sort of for that next generation. Because this isn't news to you, but a lot of the folks we'll run into, it's a founder who's run the business for 25, 30 years, doesn't have anybody to pass it on to. Their kids don't want to do anything with it.
Yeah,
it's a great business and they want to see it succeed. And so that's a perfect situation for us, where we come in and say, hey, we can help figure out what that next stage of growth is for the business, and place a leader that we all like and is sort of true to the values of the business and us.
Yeah.
And so that's, in a nutshell, I would say, kind of where the interest comes from. And I will tell you, it is a heck of a lot of fun. I am just loving every minute of it. It's getting to meet with founders and businesses and technicians, and just being a part of that environment has been awesome. So we're having a blast and doing well.
Is this your first fund, or you've done other funds?
So I've worked with Alpine once before on a different business of theirs. So right out of business school, I linked up with them. The founder of Alpine, not to get too in the weeds, but when I left the NFL, I had no idea what I was going to do. Like no clue, right? And I had heard about getting an MBA, and I'd read about it, and I thought, well, I have nothing else to do, so I'll try to do that and maybe figure it out. And the founder of Alpine happens to also be from Ohio. And so I said, well, maybe this nice guy from Ohio has something for me. And he did. He, after a 7-hour interview, offered me a job. And so I worked with them for a period of time before going off and running a startup, and then Congress, as you mentioned. But as I've gotten back to Alpine, this will be the first platform that I'm leading, and I'm co-leading it. I have a co-CEO. His name's Tyler Hoffman. But this will be the first time that I have been in this seat, where we have a commitment from Alpine for the capital that they're going to provide, and then we're going to go out throughout the country and acquire and build as many businesses as we can, in not just overhead doors, but also pedestrian doors and access control.
Nice. I think all those play well together anyway. So you have a lot of companies that are definitely just commercial, but you definitely have more probably companies that do commercial and residential. How are you handling that? Are you staying away from it? Or are you just trying to buy the commercial part of the business, or what does that look like from y'all's perspective?
It's a great question. So right now we want to get as much density on the commercial side as we can, and say, if we look at a business and it's 75-25 commercial resi, we'll take a look at that. If it's more like 50-50, it gets hard. And then, our hope is to convert more to the commercial side over time. I will say our belief in where this can get really powerful on our end is, once we've cracked the code on exactly what we're going to do from a business mix standpoint post acquisition, then we'll be in a position where we feel like we won't have to be as discerning, and we can say, hey, we can buy almost anything, and within 12 months, transform it or move it to a place that looks and feels exactly what we want for our investment mandate. And so that's sort of how we're approaching it. So more narrowly focused on commercial right now, but as we get going, I think we'll be able to open the aperture a little bit, and kind of partner with whoever makes the most sense.
Nice. And have you guys been able to, it's funny. So I moved into my new house and I don't have like Starlink's great, but my office that we've designated as my office for short term, it's on the other end of the house, upstairs, and I don't get great reception for video. So I was like, I'm gonna run to the office and jump in my office, and now they're doing landscaping outside my window. So if you guys hear blowers, like you couldn't have timed it any better. Um, so have you guys made your first purchase yet, or are you still looking for that? Like, are you doing it like a platform with an anchor and then wrapping it up into that one,
Yeah.
or are you you are okay?
Yeah, that's the idea. And we are we haven't completed our first transaction, but we are, by the time this airs, hopefully that will be done. And so
Nice, congratulations.
thank you. So we've got a couple that we're really excited about. And they're all going to kind of hit right at once. And then hopefully we'll be off to the races. So that's the goal.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, what if somebody was talking to you guys versus, let's say, another private equity firm? What's your idea of like what makes you different, or why somebody should choose you over a different private equity firm?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things I would highlight. And each firm is different. So this isn't good, bad, or indifferent. It's just we all have a different approach, and some approaches are great for some people and some are great for others. But I'll tell you, there's sort of a couple different flavors of private equity. There's one flavor which which does get a bad rap, and I think justifiably so, which is they are pure cost cutters. So they come in and they look at a business, and as they're kind of underwriting the deal, they'll say, okay, I can get rid of this person, this person, this person, and this person. I can consolidate this over here. And we can run this sort of stripped down version of the business. And that's how we're going to get our additional margin points, is primarily a cost cutting exercise. We take the complete opposite approach on that. So I would say we're more growth oriented investors. And the firm operates on what we call people first principles. And what that means in a nutshell is we know and believe that businesses only succeed because of the people inside of them. And so to come into a business, what we say is, hey, we know that these people are great people. We're lucky to be a partner with them. We're lucky to have them as a part of our journey. And we want to invest in them, invest in their growth, and bring more people into the equation. And so that's sort of how we operate. And candidly, that's why I came back to Alpine's. Like Coach Tressel, when I was at Ohio State, he had the exact same philosophy. It was all about the total person. We had a whole bunch of stuff that he would do. We do annual reviews. He'd grade you on 6 different key metrics, none of which were football related, but were about, who are you as a human being? And you'd set goals and targets, and you'd review every year. You grow your people, and then lo and behold, you get the results. Right. Tony Dungy had an almost identical philosophy, less formalized goal setting on those targets, but Tony was all about, hey, it's an all male environment. We are men with families. We're men of faith. We're men in our community. We have to grow in that regard. We're also going to hold ourselves accountable on the football field, of course. That's what we're here for. But this is about developing the total person. And then lo and behold, you get, 12 win seasons over and over and over again. You go to a Super Bowl, all that stuff. Alpine has an almost identical philosophy. And that is entirely the reason I'm here is, hey, look, we want to put people at the center of everything we do, everything. We want to invest in them. We want to grow them. We want to help allow them to achieve more than they've ever achieved professionally, so that they can go have great great purposeful lives with their family,
right?
Be a part of their community, have that life that we think they all deserve, that we want to invest in. And we know that if we do that, at the end of it, there's going to be great returns. And so I would say that, I don't know if that's a difference. I know that when I explain that to my other friends in private equity, they look at me like I'm crazy. But I will tell you the results speak for themselves. Alpine's been enormously successful. And it's not in spite of that investment in people. It is because of that investment in people. And so that's how we think about it. And that's how I think about it in this space, is like, we're going to come in and say, hey, the people inside this business, in particular, the technicians, the one out there sweating, working long, hot hours on their feet, we're going to do everything we can to make this the best possible experience they can have. We're going to invest in them, support them. And we know if we do that, at the end of the day, something great's going to happen.
Nice. I really applaud you for taking that approach because, you know, I've personally seen the, you know, accounting approach where they cut, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've been a part of that. I've seen it. I've seen um I've seen a lot of negative with private equity. I think you know, you see dilution of ownership, um, scams that happen sometimes with business owners. So those of you guys listening, like it's really important that you have somebody watching your back if you are proceeding with a private equity company, especially one that, you know, isn't led by somebody that you may not be able to trust. So I think it's important that you do your due diligence. But
Mm-hmm.
um, one thing that I think is truly important for a business owner, for most business owners, if we're trying to exit, um, is like, you know, we're a little bit emotionally invested, right?
Mm-hmm.
We either started it or we acquired it, or, you know, it got passed down to us. And a lot of hard work goes into getting our business to a place where it's attractive to a private equity firm. And so walking away knowing that the people are going to be taken care of, the business, the brand, the name, because it's all tied to the business owner essentially, right?
Yep.
So you want to make sure that you know, you don't walk away with and then they trash the brand and then all of a sudden everybody in your neighborhood's like trying to kill you.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to a lot of us. And then we had a comment on our last episode we did with private equity. They wanted us to dive a little bit into like how do you evaluate whether a company is good to buy or not? And then you don't have to talk specifics about percentages like what you guys are offering, but how do you base the amount? How do you come up with the amount that you choose to purchase a company for?
Yeah. Great question. So, on the first question, sort of how do you evaluate? I mean, we can talk about a bunch of different metrics and we can kind of go through there, and each business is going to have, each industry, I should say, is going to have its own sort of, hey, here's how we think the right way to measure a business is, right? And that's fine. What it really boils down to is what I said earlier, though. It's the answer to the question, how confident are you that this business will generate what it generated last year and then some, with some growth, right? And you know, there's a lot of different ways that you can come up with the answer to that question. But that's ultimately what we're trying to figure out every time we run into a business in any industry. It doesn't matter what the industry is. So when we look at this business based on historicals, based on the people we've met, based on all kinds of factors in the business, you know, how confident are we that that's going to be a growing asset? That's the basic question. And then how do you value it? 99% of the time in private equity, you're going to value as a multiple of EBITDA. And EBITDA, if you're not familiar, it's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. There's a couple reasons for that. One, it's probably it's one of the best measures of cash flow, normalized cash flow, and it is what lenders lend off of. So lenders don't lend off of revenue. They lend off of a multiple of EBITDA. And so that's sort of the industry language. And again, that's universal across all industries. And, you know, the multiple that one is willing to pay is sort of a mark of the quality question, right? So like if it was a Google, they're going to have a big multiple because it's a giant company that's growing fast, that has an enormous advantage, right? Like they're going to have a very large multiple. If it's a shrinking company, or one that's sort of flat and doesn't have a true advantage, and you know, they will have a lower multiple. But the price is ultimately going to be EBITDA times multiple. And those are the two things. You multiply those two together, and that'll get you your price. And there's a little bit of art and science to figuring out what EBITDA is. Everybody has a slightly different interpretation. Not unlike buying a home, everybody has a slightly different view of the value of the home. But ultimately, it's going to be those two numbers: EBITDA, multiply them together. There's your price.
Somer USA and Somer Group want to thank you for an incredible year and the trust you put in them and their products. As you know, Somer places high value on relationships, education, customer service, innovation, and professionalism. And they are grateful to you for your part in the fostering and dissemination of these values. If there is any way Somer can support you in your journey, whether through their products, the values they hold to, or the knowledge Somer has gained through interaction with door dealers across the world, please reach out to the team at your convenience. They are here to serve you. Again, thank you from the entire Somer team. Check them out at somerusa.com. Tell them Ryan sent you.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. And so hopefully we answered that for the person who commented on that. How long does the transaction take from, usually you start the conversation and then you go into an NDA, then I assume you guys probably request financials and then go into what an offer may look like, and then offer, acceptance, closing, all of that. What does that time frame look like for a business owner?
I would say it can be as short as that entire process. I think the shortest you would see something like that is maybe 45, 60 days from literally like first contact to close. I think that's on the short end.
That's pretty quick. Yeah.
That's very quick. Yeah, I'd say that's the shortest, I would say. Like, that happens 1 out of every 1,000 deals, maybe. Maybe 1 out of every 5,000. So it's not normal, but that's as short as it could take. I think average is more like a couple months, 3 to 5 months. So that
what's different between those two? Is it like the negotiation of the pricing and gathering documents?
It's a lot of things. So, there's each stage has its own set of things that could be a barrier, right? So let's say from intro to NDA, there might be an introduction and a founder may say, hey, I'm going on vacation for a month. I'll be back. I'll think about it. I'll let you know when I get back. Mm-hmm. Right. And they got to think through it. And then maybe, 2 months later, they say, all right, I'm ready to start. Okay. So we've just burned 3 months. That's fine. But that'll draw it out. And then, then it will take a period of time to get the financials, get those analyzed and turn an offer. I will say on our end, we can do that pretty quickly. If we get a set of financials back, we can come to a preliminary valuation within a couple days or a week. And at that point, if there's agreement, then we go into what's called LOI. So you sign a letter of intent, and all that does is say, here's what we intend to purchase the price at. We're asking for 45 days, 60 days, whatever, some period of time to evaluate and make sure that, what we're buying is real. And that's kind of back to that home appraisal inspection process, if you will.
Yeah.
And then we get into the guts of the business and really get as much information as we can to feel comfortable with the preliminary valuation. And, assuming everybody's okay there, again, that's sort of call it 30 to 70 days, 75 days. Then you sign a purchase agreement and it's done. And so it can take as long as it takes.
Right.
I'll tell you from an interested buyer standpoint, if we love a business and the owner is able to provide the information quickly, we can go very fast, back closer to that 45, 60 day window.
Yeah.
The things that slow it down, one, if we come to a fundamentally different view on valuation, and then you got to kind of renegotiate it, that can slow things down. Also, look, like our founders, their full-time job isn't selling their business. Their full-time job is running their business. And so,
right.
If you now engage in a sale process, that's just going to be an extra work stream. And so it's, it's going to take time to get through it all. And that's all fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the reality of selling a business, right? The buyer needs some assurance as to what's in there. And then, you lock arms and you partner up and away you go.
So software companies get stupid multipliers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the recurring revenue.
Yeah.
Mostly. So when you compare like some commercial companies have recurring revenue with contracts and stuff with some decent accounts. Do you take that into consideration when trying to purchase those contracts with recurring revenue?
Yeah. Yes. And you're absolutely right on why software has big multiples, right? Software, software business, you're hoping to see logo retention. So the percent of customers that stay with you year over year, you're hoping to see that in the mid 90s. And you're hoping to see their revenue retention actually be north of 100%. So they buy a little bit more last year than they did the previous year, or next year than they did this year. And so when you have that, you can pay a big multiple because you can be very confident that the business is going to look just like that next year and then some. Right. Back to that. How confident are you? On commercial, where it can work really well is similarly, if you look at the numbers and you say, oh, wow, they got, X percent of their customers are the same people year over year over year. They might not buy the same, they might not require the same maintenance service, whatever, but they keep coming back. That's one thing for sure that, from a buying perspective, you could look at and say, hey, this one deserves a higher multiple, because they're able to clearly keep their customers happy and coming back for more every year.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I think that's key for everyone who's not considering selling now, but maybe they do want to exit in the next 2 to 5 years or whatever. Like, go ahead and start working on your plan to get contracts for recurring revenue with local businesses so that you can show that on paper, and there's value to that, right? Like, not just like monetary value as far as like dollar for dollar, but potentially for the multiplier on your EBITDA.
Right. Yeah.
So
I mean, to give you an example, like a bad example. So I was talking to a friend of mine who runs a PR firm essentially. And then I just asked him, I said, hey, I'm just curious, like, do you feel like you have sticky clients where they come back year after year after year? Or do you feel like you have to rebuild the business from scratch every year? And he said, oh, I have to rebuild this business from scratch every year. And I said, okay, well, that's a hard business to buy.
yeah, it's hard. Hard to run too.
Right. Yeah, it's a hard
I
business to
know
run.
because I live in that life right now. I mean, I was in software, right? I've got a marketing agency. It's so nice to have a marketing agency where you only have to worry about fulfillment and you can make great profits without having to start at zero at the beginning of every month.
Yeah.
So that's the tough part about, I think the garage door industry, especially for residential, because it's hard to get homeowners to buy into the idea of maybe purchasing a monthly subscription or some type of monthly membership to have
Yeah.
service. But for commercial, it makes a great deal of sense, but also not easily done to lock people into contracts either, businesses. So, a lot of these big companies, they got, you're going to send you through loops with procurement and red lines and everything else. You got to go back and forth, and you probably got to be pretty cheap on your maintenance just to be able to get back in the door and potentially find other things wrong. And so there's a lot that goes into that, right? And I know here in the Atlanta market, like, it's a race to the bottom on those maintenance agreements. Like
Yeah.
they're losing money. It's kind of like a loss leader just to be able to get back in the door and lock in that client. But I definitely understand. So, are you guys? Is this a dock and door? Are you guys doing dock too, or you are? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll do dock door. Basically, we think of it as perimeter and then interior. So dock door and gates, dock door gates. And then, like I said, access control, CCTV, and then pedestrian door on the inside. And the access control and the video surveillance is sort of the thing that connects all of those, right? Because most commercial facilities, if you've got a dock and a door, there's going to be some sort of access control and some sort of surveillance, because you got to secure the thing. So that's sort of how we think about it.
That's smart. And you guys are you guys buying individual companies like access control that doesn't do doors? You are? Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of that. So I imagine you guys are probably also looking at a lot of parking deck jobs with the companies that you're acquiring. There's a lot of that. Barrier arms.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of the companies we're looking at do that. And I think that's interesting revenue. One thing I didn't realize, because you're a victim of your own personal experience, is there's a lot of barrier arm gates that get run over late at night when somebody maybe shouldn't be driving. But we hear that a lot. That drives a ton of the repairs and the replacements. So yeah, it's back to that. How confident are you that the revenue will be there next year? That's one where we think it's a pretty solid market.
Nice. So, from your experience with dealing with business owners, what's been the most glaring misconception from a business owner's perspective when working with like a company like yours, a private equity firm? Like, do you see business owners kind of making the same mistake or the same assumptions prior to getting into the conversation with you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that they're making a mistake per se, but I think the one thing that what we always need to keep in mind is, for us as a private equity firm, we've done hundreds of transactions, right? Like that is who we are. We do deals. For most of our business owners, this will be the first. If it's not the first, it's certainly the most important transaction of their lives. And, when you're doing that, there's a financial element there that's enormously important, but there's a human element that's maybe more important. Back to what you said, right? It was their daddy's business, or they started it, from scratch, or they've put everything they have into this thing. And so, there's an emotional connection, almost like a marriage, that it's there, and it's important, and we need to honor that. And so I don't think, again, these aren't mistakes by any stretch of the imagination, but I think there's always a part of every deal that is very much a human element of, how do we create the best home for this business, and how do we help our sellers sell is essentially sort of the framework that I would use. And I think I think when you kind of approach it that way, it can be very helpful. Again, I wouldn't say that there's it's not mistakes. I mean, we ran into one with a bunch of fraud, but that's
no, wow.
Yeah, but that those were mistakes.
Hopefully that's not common.
No, it's not. It's very uncommon. Very, very uncommon. That was a one-shot deal, hopefully. But yeah, I mean, that would be a mistake. But no, the vast majority of the founders we run into, and this is why I like this industry so much, they're awesome people. Just like first and foremost, they are awesome people. They have worked their butts off. They love their employees. They value their employees. They want to do right by their employees, but it's time for them to sell for some reason or another. And our job is to figure out how best to help them through that process.
Have you, some of these guys that you're talking to closing soon, what are they going to do? Like, I think commonly about a lot of these guys, this is all they've done their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So they're cashing a check. They're probably getting a pretty big lump sum of cash. Like, what are they doing? Are they gonna sell the house and go be a bartender on a beach somewhere? Like, have you heard any aspirations of what they plan to do when they check out?
So some want to stay on and keep grinding and go, right? They see us as, hey, this is the partner I've wanted, who can help take this thing where I've always wanted to take it. That's one piece. The majority for us, like I said, our bread and butter is folks who are just ready to step away. And everybody's doing something different. So, one gentleman, he's taken his wife to Europe, and he's awesome. We love him. Unfortunately, his father recently passed, and so they're having a sort of a, hey, let's get out of Dodge here for a couple months and just kind of do our thing. And
Good for him.
he and his wife, yeah, we're so happy for them.
If you're
they're
gonna
amazing.
mourn, go to Europe and do it and just get away and enjoy life.
Yeah, that sounds nice, right? I don't.
Yeah.
It's not something I can do right now, but
Right.
at some point, maybe my wife and I will do that. That's one. Another gentleman, knowing him, he's a big hunter and fisher. I think he'll do all that till his heart's content. And we're happy to see him do that. But
Have the
everybody's got
biggest blind in the world.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, just go out in the middle of nowhere and do this. Yeah, so everybody's different, but part of it, in all honesty, for me, it really does get back to, like, can we provide that great home, and then can we celebrate that founder and just give he and his family, or her and her family, some of that time back for them to enjoy, retirement and whatever it is they want to do next. So that's the fun part. To me, it's like, that's the American dream. In this country, you can do that. You can start a business all by yourself. You, a technician, maybe somebody in the office, you can grow it, and there's going to be somebody out there willing to buy it and take it to the next level. So it's awesome.
I agree. I think it's awesome. Like, I know how hard these people work and all the stress that goes along with starting the business and getting it where it's at, to be recognized by you guys. I guess you guys somehow are able to acquire a list or some type of database that shows you businesses that might fall in the category that you may be interested in. Is that how you guys find the companies?
Yes and no. Honestly, like, there's believe it or not, a lot of it's just Google and word of mouth, and trying to figure out, hey, I talked to this guy, he mentioned that business over there. Okay, why don't we go put that, and it's not unlike sort of inside sales, if you will. Like, you're going to be on the phone a lot. You're going to be calling folks. You're going to be emailing, LinkedIn. It's all of the above, whatever works. However you can get the job done. That's ultimately what you got to do. And so there's no shortcuts to that, at least not that we have found. Maybe somebody out there can do it, but
Are there other people that are as slow as me that don't realize who you are until later in the conversation, or is everyone pretty good about figuring out who you are? Like, because you were on television playing football with Peyton Manning and the Ohio State football player. Like, do people recognize that when they jump on a call with you?
Most do not, which is probably good. I mean, I got a face for radio, so it's good. People don't. I mean, this nose is it's not getting smaller. I can tell you that. But I in Ohio more so, for sure. We get a lot of Buckeye fans, obviously. So we have some fun with that. Indianapolis as well, and then occasionally, folks will, at the end of it, like, I thought I recognized you. You get that every now and then, but I can be pretty anonymous. That's one good thing about having a helmet on in football. Most people don't know what you look like, but
right.
But it happens, and I don't know. It's always flattering, I guess, if they know you for something positive, for sure.
Yeah, that's good. Well, anything you want to share before we wrap this up? Because I got one last question that's unrelated to this. And but I just want to open it up for any advice that you might want to give business owners in the garage door industry that might be thinking about like trying to exit.
The one thing I would say, and I say this to my team, I say this to my partners, I say it to everybody, right? In life, fortunately, if you're in business, you get to pick your partners many times. And when you're selling your business, that's one of those times you get to pick your partner and just choose wisely. Choose a person whose values you align with. You feel like, hey, I can trust this person. I don't care what there's a lot of quote trust you can build into these documents and these agreements. At the end of the day, it's the human being on the other side of it that means a heck of a lot more than whatever's in that document. And so, I always say, just in a world where you can pick your partners, choose wisely, because that's going to ultimately, the money's one thing, but the money isn't going to be that different from firm to firm. It's going to be within a range, right? But what is going to be different is the human being on the other side. And so that's always my advice. That's not just a founder. That like I said, I say that to my team. I say that to my family. That's just how I feel. In my life, when I've got great partners, I'm happy and everything's awesome. When I got bad partners, man, I'm miserable. So
I agree.
Yeah.
All right. So last question, unrelated. We gotta ask, is there any great stories you can tell us about a game, an NFL player that you had experience with, or even college, just something that is one of your cool stories that you don't tell a lot?
Let's see. I mean, there definitely are. Let me see. So I'll give you a good Peyton Manning story, and this gives you a sense. So people, this isn't so much from the NFL. This is post NFL, but it meant a lot to me. So everybody knows Peyton is an amazing quarterback, right? I mean, that's just who people think he is. And he was. And he's funny and he's great on television and all that stuff, right? He has earned his reputation. The thing that I appreciate more than anything in the world from him is the quality of friend that he is. So he is an amazing friend, and values that about himself. And I'll give you a story. So when I was in Congress, which is a terrible job, I was very proud to do it. I'm certainly grateful for my constituents for allowing me to do it, but it is every bit as frustrating as anybody listening to this thinks it is. It is a mess. And so I was going through something very public that was very hard on me and my family, and I think he knew it. And he called me one day, and I hope he doesn't mind me telling this story, but he called me one day and said, "Hey, I want to take you to Augusta National, play some golf." He's a member there. I'm a golfer. Not a good one, but I am a golfer. And he said, I want to do that. You think you can make it? It's like, yeah. So
if Peyton calls and offers to go golfing, you pretty much drop what you're doing and you go.
Yeah, that's actually what I did. I was like, you tell me when and I will figure it out. And so long story short, that I think that gives you a sense of, he and I don't talk.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
We talk once every 6 months, once a year. But when he knows one of his friends, somebody he that's been a part of his life, is going through something, he's going to be there for him. And
that's cool.
Not everybody's like that, right?
No.
I haven't caught a pass from him in more than 10 years.
Right.
But those relationships stay, and that commitment to one another persists. And so I think that's a good story. You know what? Actually, he ended up, unfortunately, they had an issue, family, like it's somebody in his wife's family, I think, had some sort of issue. He wasn't able to come, but he actually found us a local member to come, and it was one of his buddies from Augusta, myself, a guy named Clyde Christensen, who was my receiver coach, later Peyton's quarterback coach, longtime coach, and Dwight Freeney, if you know that name, defensive end.
Good
Dwight,
one too.
Yeah, Dwight broke his hand on the first hole.
But, no. How you break your hand playing golf?
If you ever see Dwight Freeney swing a golf club, you know how you do it. He
must have dug it into the ground or something.
He swings harder than anybody I've ever seen in my life. I mean, he swings so freaking hard. And first swing, he broke his hand.
Did y'all tell him you don't have to swing that hard?
Yeah, good luck telling him that.
That's funny.
So I said, I take a time. I don't care what you got to do. You got to finish this round, bro. So yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So
Well, thanks for coming on this show, man. It means a lot. Hopefully this, one of our listeners may be in a position. If they are, how do they reach out to you? How do they start the process that they feel like they qualify for what you talked about you're looking for?
Yeah, so best would be to email me, I guess, which is Gonzales, AGONZALEZ at alpineinvestors.com. That's the quickest way, and I'm very responsive. I'm always on my phone and my email and all that. So, yeah, that would be it. Would love to talk to anybody if anything I said resonated, and you said, hey, that sounds like something that might make sense. Would love to have the conversation.
Yep. And if you guys want to, if you want a warm introduction, feel free to hit me up. I'll introduce you and help you get the ball rolling to see if it's a good fit. So anyway, thank you, Anthony, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. And I don't think your story will get back to Peyton. We don't have a lot of former NFL players listening to our podcasts or people that know Peyton Manning. So I think you're safe there. But anyway, thank you guys for following the podcast. Again, as always, if you haven't liked our Facebook, Instagram, all that, make sure you follow us, subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and hit me up if you've got any questions, anything I can help you with. I will get back to you. Just be patient with me. Thank you very much for listening to the show. Be safe, and hopefully, if you have interest, there'll be an excellent exit for you. Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me.